Mr. Gallner, anything?
Yeah, with the indulgence of the commission and staff, I just had a quick thing I wanted to mention. This is something I've been researching lately and I thought was interesting and potentially relevant to our planning process. This is a book I read recently. It's called Hot, Living Through the Next 50 Years on Earth by Mark Hertsgaard. And it's about climate change, but it's about an aspect of climate change that I wasn't familiar with previously. It's about climate change adaptation specifically. Most of what I've heard about climate change in the past concerns prevention, efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to prevent climate change from happening or delay it. Adaptation is about the other side of that, about taking steps to prepare our community to withstand the impacts of climate change should they come to pass. And they're obviously both important, but there are differences. Prevention is necessarily a collective action. Our prevention efforts on climate change will succeed or fail based on the sum total of human actions over the whole globe. Whereas adaptation is inherently local and it's much more concrete. And I thought that was really interesting. So I looked for more information on it. And one thing that I came across was this. This is a report that was prepared for the governor in 2009. It's the California Climate Adaptation Strategy. This is actually just the executive summary. The whole report is about 200 pages long, but you can download it from the state website. It has a lot of really good information, projections in a number of different areas. Two in particular that I found interesting were the projections in terms of sea level rise and water supplies. I think those are going to be huge issues in Carpinteria. Something else I wanted to mention in the recommendations in the report. Recommendation 9 says, the most effective adaptation strategies relate to short and long-term decisions. Most of these decisions are the responsibility of local planning entities. As a result, communities with general plans and local coastal plans should begin, when possible, to amend their plans to assess climate change impacts, identify areas most vulnerable to these impacts, and develop reasonable and rational risk reduction strategies using the climate adaptation strategy as guidance. And I think that's really good advice. There's a number of other communities that have already started efforts like this. I'm not sure if you saw this, but in yesterday's LA Times, there was an article about Newport Beach and the effort they're engaged in to develop a climate change adaptation strategy to deal with sea level rise in that community. It's a good article. I recommend it. Another thing in Hertsgaard's book, Hot, there's a chapter that talks about King County in Washington State and a multi-year effort they've engaged in there to incorporate climate change adaptation planning into their county-wide planning process. And there's a lot of good information on the King County website about that. And just one more, Chula Vista near San Diego just completed a year-long project on developing a city climate change adaptation strategy. And there's a lot of really great information on that city's website about that I think, again, we could benefit from in Carpinteria. And just kind of finishing up, obviously this is a big issue. It goes well beyond just us here on the Planning Commission. But as I look at this, it's very daunting. You know, some of these challenges are great and very serious, but I see cause for hope as well. I think Carpinteria is well positioned to deal with these issues effectively. Some things just about our natural setting, some things about the history of prior land use decisions in Carpinteria, I think are going to serve us really well in facing up to these challenges. And in light of that, I guess one last thing I've been looking at that I wanted to share. This is the Vision 2020 report, which came out in 1997, and I was familiar with it. It's quoted in the general plan, but I'd never actually read the original report, so I got a real kick out of that. A friend loaned me her copy, and I was looking through that. And one thing in it that I did want to share, I'm not sure you can see it, but there's this logo that they use several places in the report. It's an image of a train with the year 2020 across the front of it. And I think that's a really good metaphor for the process they were engaged in that activity. And I think, if you replace that 2020 with the year 2050. It's a similarly good metaphor for the kind of conversation I think we need to start having about adapting to the effects of climate change in Carpinteria, because this climate change train is real and it's coming. So, thanks.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Let's move on to the director's report, please.